Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox podcast. At my site's myersdetox.com. We have hundreds and hundreds of podcasts, and we also have hundreds of articles as well on the topic of detoxification, the best supplements for detoxification, all about how to detox your body and prep your body for detoxification of heavy metals and chemicals. And if you want to get on our newsletter, we give you guys lots of specials and keep you up to date on all the latest research on how to properly detox your body. So go sign up to get our newsletter at myersdetox.com. Our guest today is Tara Youngblood, and we're going to be talking about the top 10 tips to reprogram your sleep using light, temperature, and stress reduction as well. And we talk about so many different tips. I know you guys out there that are struggling with sleep, especially during this just absolutely unprecedented, crazy time. I know so many of you guys are struggling out there, and I certainly was in 2020. My sleep just went out the window, and I was just reaching for everything. I kind of revisited sleep, revisited what are the top things out there right now that are going to help me. And I got an Aura ring, and I got trying all these different things. And then I discovered the ChiliPad, and the company sent me one, and I tried it. It was unbelievable. It completely changed my sleep. I stopped night waking. I just love this thing. And I wanted to have Tara come on the show to talk about the research behind it, why it works, why temperature regulation is so important when you're sleeping. But we talk about so many other things about how to optimize your sleep. So this is a really, really good show. Tune in if you want to optimize your sleep, to optimize your health. And I know you guys tuning in are also concerned about detoxification. Believe me, you have to sleep if you want to detox. It's one thing I work on. When I'm working with clients, I prioritize getting them to sleep, because if you're not doing that, you can't detox. It's not going to happen. And I know you guys are concerned about toxins and the level of chemicals and what heavy metals you have in your body. So that's why I created a quiz at heavymetalsquiz.com to help you figure out your relative body burden of toxins. And after you take that quiz, you get your results, which are interesting, and then you get a free video series that answers a lot of your frequently asked questions, like how long does it take to detox, and what kind of testing should you do. Just answers a lot of different questions that you guys have if you're starting out about detox, or even if you're an old pro and have tried a bunch of different things. Go check it out at heavymetalsquiz.com. Our guest today, Tara Youngblood. She is the co-founder and CEO at ChiliSleep and author of Reprogram Your Sleep, the sleep recipe that works, and is a highly regarded international speaker. Tara has extended her expertise to a wealth of high-profile platforms, including TEDx, Skookum Tech Talks, and National Sleep Foundation's Sleep Show. You can learn more about Tara and her work at thesleepgeekcoach.com, and you can learn more about the ChiliPad that her and her husband developed at chilitechnology.com. Tara, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about, what inspired you to create the ChiliPad? So just so you guys know what this is, it's a pad you put on your bed that cools you down while you sleep. I have one. It's unbelievable. I've been using it for about a year. Totally changed my sleep because I'm a hot sleeper and I wake up a lot. I wake up if I get hot, and ruins my sleep if I get hot. And the ChiliPad is just beyond amazing. So what inspired you to create this?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Todd is my husband and co-founder, and his uncle invented the waterbed. And so,
That's awesome.
About 2007, people were adjusting pressure in like a Select Comfort kind of bed. And we're like, I want to be able to adjust temperature. I want to be able to do like, in your car where the driver and passenger get different temperatures. We've always slept at different temperatures. I think statistically that's most partners in bed do that. So we're not unusual, but he would love to sleep on a slab of ice. And I actually I still want to warm up to sleep. And so it was an opportunity for us to each have our own remote control. So that's sort of the genesis of where it started. But then, I've never been a good sleeper. And I think it expanded into further of like, wow, this temperature thing is way more than that comfort control. But it actually does a lot of magical stuff for sleep as well.
Yeah, my husband's the same way. He grew up in the Amazon in Colombia. So he likes it really hot. And he likes to sweat and that I will die. Like I have to have it really, really cold. And I like it like the chili pad at like 72 degrees and to get nice and chilly. And it prevents waking up. I might wake up once, but if I'm hot, I'll wake up 3 or even 4 times. And it's really, really disruptive. So this is a brilliant technology. So, so many people have sleep issues. I've certainly have suffered in the past from sleep issues, but millions of people have disruptive sleep, and it dramatically impacts their weight, their immunity. I mean, it has such huge ramifications on their health. Can you talk about why people are having so many problems sleeping?
Yeah, so there's all sorts of reasons, and I think one of the biggest ones is stress is one of those biggest factors that we don't assume that's going to have an impact on stress. But our stress that we carry around is a big impact on whether we can fall asleep, whether we stay asleep, even just how our metabolism reacts in our own bodies. So when we think about stress, it's about managing that throughout the day. Stress was designed to help us if we're being chased by a lion. And, despite all the other stresses we have in our lives, it's really, we're not about to have our arm ripped off. And so all those physiological responses that stress does for us can prevent us to sleep, because obviously if a lion's about to attack us, we want to prevent sleep. And so stress is really kind of the first enemy to kind of manage and keep manageable. I have 4 boys, so we talk about stress in terms of monsters, but the stress hormone of cortisol is actually a good hormone. You wake up in the morning and you want to have a reasonable size of it. So it's a cute, friendly monster. When it gives you that boost in the morning and you're working out, you get that burst of cortisol, you feel ready to go and do your day. That's a good, friendly monster. But if he gets out of control and, pandemic or financial stress or relationship stress or work stress or whatever it is, your lion in your day, if that gets out of control, by the time you go to sleep, then it's a really big, ugly monster. And that's when it's really hard to sleep with. So, first impact is try to manage your stress, and that can be easier said than done. But it is worthwhile to take those moments and take those timeouts to manage stress. And these days, all of us feel stress, 2020, 2021 now, COVID stuff, it's a different world and there are stresses and it's hard to escape. But even just 1 minute of breathing, and when I say breathing, it's like take a shorter breath in than out, and just take 60 seconds to yourself. For me, I try to anchor it to every time I go to use the restroom, because I have to do that anyway. So just take an extra minute, and it does an amazing job of flushing out that extra cortisol. So that's, I think, number one. But as far as temperature, our lives are nothing like we evolved in, living in caves or outside, where the temperature was much more like being outside. And we don't live that way now with central air or central heating, the same temperature all day in our office, in our homes. We're not spending the same amount of time outside to basically trigger those changes. And temperature has a unique role in triggering changes throughout your day. And you can see this if you look at sort of circadian rhythms. You'll see that your core body temperature does sort of a roller coaster throughout the day, and different times of the day will be up and different times of the day will be down. Well, when you want to go to sleep at night, it drops just like the temperature outside does. And when you figure that we have foam mattresses that are absorbing heat and not letting us get cooler, We cover up with blankets because that feels warm and snuggly, but we're basically insulating ourselves as these engines at night. And we're not allowing sort of that ventilation of cooling to happen. So we have to be able to give that heat off. And that's really where our product does help sort of keep you and maintain that cooling part. But temperature is just a really big part of that sleep switch. So Clifford Zapier out of Harvard was the first person to coin that, but it really is a switch in your brain that is triggered. It's not a conscious one even, but if there's a change of temperature in the evening when you're trying to sleep, it'll help it release serotonin and melatonin naturally and help you fall asleep.
Yeah, because we need to recreate our ancient environment. I mean, how we developed, over millions of years, how our bodies evolved, and that is kind of recreating our environmental cues that set our circadian rhythms. And I think when people get out of sync with nature's circadian rhythms, that's when they start having problems with sleep and all that stuff. So how can we best support optimizing our circadian rhythms so we're tired of getting sleepy when it's time to go to bed and staying asleep, and then so that facilitates us being able to be alert and productive during the day?
Yeah, well, the first thing is it's helpful to know the when part. And we're all a little bit different. And you've probably heard of being a morning person or a night person. There's those of us that like to wake up early in the morning, or those of us that like to stay up late. That sort of part of our personality is actually a genetic trait that we are born with. And that gene kind of governs that. But you can take a chronotype test, that's called a chronotype, and that'll kind of help give you a perspective on your clock of when your optimal time is to go to sleep and when your optimal time is to wake up. And you can kind of get a benchmark. And so what you need to be thinking about then is similar to, we talked about that switch, that light switch, of you need to make sure in that window you really are trying to activate sleep, because your body clock is going to keep going with or without you. So if you decide to stay up 2 hours later, that just means your body clock has been clicking away at those 2 hours of sleep. And that makes it harder to get, especially deep sleep, because that tends to be the first half of the night. And so if you start 2 hours late, you're just kind of missing out on 2 hours. And there are some ways to hack through that. But in general, we want to be conscientious if we do that all the time. Now, everybody stays up late and hangs out with friends occasionally. And so if it happens occasionally, not a big deal, but on average, we want to be trying to think about our clocks. Yeah. And when is the right time. And the same for waking up. It's fun to want to sleep in. Today in North Carolina, it's cloudy and rainy, and it's that day where you want to stay in bed and pull up the covers and sleep longer. But just like you want to turn on sleep, you want to turn it off as well. And so if you wildly swing your sleep schedules, you'll see it in healthcare workers or shift workers. You're constantly in a state of flux, and your body likes regularity. It likes a system. It likes a plan or a recipe, whatever you want to call that sort of methodical nature. And so if you're all over the place where you get up at 5 during the week and then sleep until noon on Saturdays, that swing can cause you to feel exhausted all the time and not make you, your body can't figure out which way it's supposed to go. So understanding that if you can wake up fairly consistently as well, again, there's always exceptions, but try to keep the on and off switches in their buckets of time.
I would love to be able to sleep in, but that just doesn't happen. I don't know why for my whole life, I wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. Like no matter what time I go to bed, I know I'm waking up at 7 a.m. So I've just learned if I want to get a good night's sleep, I have to go to bed at, at least 10 p.m. Or it's not gonna happen. But yeah, so, sleep is so important for recovery and regeneration. And I think as people don't realize that they're like, oh, I'll just sleep when I take a dirt nap. But the problem is if you shortchange yourself, you go to bed really, really late at midnight, 1 a.m. or what have you. I mean, that just has devastating effects for your body's regeneration, for your ability to detox. Your liver starts detoxing around 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. rather. And you're just missing out on all of that if you shortchange yourself on sleep. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so sleep is all about that recovery time. And I really think about it in terms of a retirement savings plan. So, we teach our sort of young people, 20 something, if you start saving up now, by the time you're in retirement, you're investing in your future. And really sleep is a long-term play like that. Everybody can miss a night or be short sleeping and you can survive and say it's not, and that sort of trains us to think this isn't a big deal. But if we never ever put money in that bank account, we never ever sort of save up, that equation, especially when combined with stress, is now what's leading to autoimmune diseases. They're seeing it in Alzheimer's. Your brain actually cleans the plaques out that are attributed to Alzheimer's every night during deep sleep. Your spinal fluid will rinse your brain and help maintain the health of it. But again, if you're never in deep sleep, it cannot do that. And so over time that builds up. And so they're now attributing every disease of the elderly to a lack of deep sleep at some point. So it's, really important, in that long-term play. And it's super easy because it feels like when you give up time for sleep, you feel like, well, I can't do anything. I'm not productive. But actually, it's the opposite. Your body's very productive during that time. It's just you may not be crunching it out on your computer, but that time is invaluable for your body to recover and rejuvenate in every aspect, from your liver to your memory. It's all really important for sleep.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just because your eyes are closed doesn't mean you're getting quality sleep. And I think I got an Aura ring a couple of years ago and I started tracking it. And I was really, surprised. I was kind of testing what was working, what would help me get deeper sleep. And, especially with 2020 and just that whole just nightmare of 2020. I mean, my sleep just took such a nosedive. And so I was just looking for every single thing I could to optimize my sleep. And then you guys sent me a chili pad and it was revolutionary. It was amazing. I saw much better improved sleep scores with my Aura ring, with my heart rate variability. It was a huge, huge change for me. I saw that also with CBD. Now I'm using CBN, which also helps with sleep. So I was just trying all different kinds of things, melatonin, et cetera. But I was really surprised by how big a change I saw just by adjusting my temperature.
Yeah, it's amazing. Honestly, talked about sort of that, reason of why we invented it. And in all honesty, when we did, it wasn't with a knowledge of even how much of a role temperature plays in sleep, on how it activates and changes, and what's going to change about your sleep is you're unconscious. So there's only so many things you can do. You can do stuff during the day of not eating as late, or cutting out caffeine later in the day, or alcohol and all those other influences. Even in the stress one, there's only so much you can do. But then once you close your eyes, how do you keep telling your body that you really want that best sleep? Well, temperature talks to your hypothalamus, which is your unconscious part of your brain. So this is the measurement for your thermostat doesn't exist in your conscious mind as much as we like to think it is. It's a little wonky then. That's where some people will feel warm, or you'll feel warmer or cooler if it seasonally changes. It's pretty subjective if you let your conscious mind do it. But your unconscious mind actually takes those cues and says, oh, it's cooling down. I'm going to do deep sleep. And my core body temperature is able to drop those 2 degrees. And in that process, it's basically telling it, yes, deep sleep, you can get deep sleep. It's nighttime. It's the right time. You're cueing yourself. And so we are kind of faking that, sun going down, cooler part of your night, or emphasizing it if you're actually sleeping at night. But we even find for shift workers, you can basically kind of fake the night and tell your body, hey, it's really time to get deep sleep now. And despite how long you spend in bed, it really does boil down to good quality sleep. Talk to people all the time that they've taken an Ambien, or they're taking some sort of pharma to help them sleep. And all of those are hallucinogen drugs. And so, yes, you're unconscious, but it's kind of like you don't feel rested after surgery. An anesthesiologist will tell you there's multiple levels of consciousness, but that's not the same as sleep. You're not sleeping while you're in surgery, you're knocked out. And that's really the equivalent of what's happening with those drugs. And so you're still not getting deep sleep. You're still not getting the rest you are, your body will slow down, and that might be helpful for a short period of time. But the sooner we can get people off those drugs, the better.
Yeah, the sleep meds, you're not getting a deep restorative sleep. Just check it for yourself. If you have an Oura Ring or any other kind of tracking device, you're not getting restorative sleep. And for me, what was so incredible about using a Chili pad was I went into menopause last year, and I'm 48, and I started getting really hot at night when I was sleeping because estrogen helps to regulate your temperature. It's part of the mechanism that helps regulate your temperature. And I was getting hot flashes, and I was sleeping much hotter at night. And I was waking up like 3 and 4 times a night. It was driving me nuts. And the Chili pad just really helped knock all that out. It was amazing. So I think it's really imperative for women that are going through menopause, that are maybe aren't able to control their blood sugar, or aren't able to, or they're just kind of starting that, or trying to figure out how to, they can't control their body temperature. Can really, really help change the game for you with sleep.
Yeah, the female body, there's perks to it, but there's definitely temperature is something even throughout your cycle will change for all of those reasons. It's obviously magnified during menopause or even during pregnancy. You'll see some of the same sort of fluctuations and wild temperature swings. But throughout our lives as women, sleep and temperature is a bit of a mess. But that's one of those things we just need to, like everything else, be a little bit more thoughtful of and plan. And so even throughout your cycle, you may find yourself adjusting your temperature slightly to be a little cooler, especially as you're right about to get your period. You'll find that you start to heat up a little bit for some people. So it's really important. And unfortunately, any studies on sleep have not, because of those cycles, been on women for the most part. And as a gender, we sleep way more poorly than men do. So, it's really important as women, we take care of ourselves. We carry more stress and we don't sleep as well. And that's not a good combination as we get older.
Yeah, I find because our brain is built to multitask, and we're thinking about work, we're cleaning the house and doing this and taking care of daddy's stuff too, and taking care of the kids and all this stuff we have to keep track of. I find that women their minds are just going. They have that tired but wired kind of thing going on. So it's really important to work on those external cues like temperature and whatnot to help facilitate sleep better.
I was going to say one more thing on the menopause, because we've done some studies. And so it is really important to know the power of sleep is if you can mitigate hot flashes at night with temperature, you'll actually have less hot flashes during the day as well. And so it's, by sleeping well, by investing in sleep, especially during menopause or pregnancy, or when we're going through changes in our lives, or mostly when you're under stress or any of those things, think harder about sleep instead of kind of being willing to give it up, because it really has a healing impact, and the symptoms of whatever you're going through will be less when you sleep better. Sleep is just really powerful as a mitigator for those extremes. It may not stop it altogether, but it will definitely take it down a notch.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense what you said about if you control your hot flashes at night, it controls them more during the day. Because what happens when you don't get enough sleep, you can have the blood sugar levels of a diabetic the next day if you get 5 or less hours of sleep. And if you can't control your blood sugar, if your blood sugar shoots up, you're going to have a hot flash. So that's kind of what precipitates that. What are some other things that happen to us when we don't get enough sleep?
Yeah, so this one, when we lost our son, one of our sons passed away suddenly, and I didn't sleep for almost a year, really very little. And so, it's really the equivalent of being drunk. And the CDC has done studies, the military has done studies, even on sort of fatigue science. And if you're not sleeping, your cognitive ability is like having drinks and driving home. And we all the time, if you let someone do that, you'd be, socially ostracized for letting someone drive home drunk. But we do it with sleep all the time, and we think it's okay. And we really need to get to a spot where we understand it leads to depression and a very bad cycle with mental illness. There's so many ways in which the sleep factor contributes, but it is horrible for our cognitive abilities. It is just, you might as well just have 6 drinks if you miss 5 5 hours or less of sleep. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's interesting going through the whole like nightmare of 2020 and whatnot, the pandemic. I was reading that the number one thing that you can do for any kind of, illness is sleep. That's the best thing for immunity. And they noticed that people's immune responses went down dramatically if they didn't have enough sleep. And I was looking at this research and it was just amazing. I was like, the number one thing is sleep to improve your immunity. So let's talk a little bit about, if we really need 8 hours of sleep every night, because that's kind of the rule of thumb. It seems like, where did that idea come from? Because we are all different. And I seem to just need 7 hours of sleep a night. My eyes just bloop, they just pop open after 7 hours. And even though I'd love to sleep more, it just doesn't happen. So what's going on there?
That is one of my favorite questions. And I really feel like it's become sort of this myth. But 8 hours actually evolved during the industrial age when factory workers petitioned to get 8 hours off for rest time. And so we've kind of done that. But you'll see cultures like Spain, where there's a different culture of eating later at night. And so even literary references from, the 1800s, Dickens or whatever, we'll talk about first sleep or second sleep. We often did more polyphasic sleeps. We had naps. The siesta is a real thing. And in hot cultures, resting in the heat of the day is pretty acceptable. And you'll actually see a little dip in that circadian rhythm of your core body temperature during the siesta hours. So it's a great opportunity if you're a shift worker to kind of match that as well. But we're all different. There's billions of us. And the thought that we all need to sleep 8 hours on the button is crazy. It's about being smart. So if you're tracking and you're sleeping 10 hours or more on an average basis, that's probably too much. And there's some, you need to kind of look at that. And if you're sleeping like 6 hours or less all the time, you probably need to look at it. It's a benchmark, but it shouldn't be the ultimate deciding factor. It really is about quality. It's kind of like dieting as well. Like you can eat just less calories, but if you're smart about what calories you eat, it's actually way more effective than just carte blanche taking everything off. Yeah. So it's about, being smart about what you're doing and really like finding out for yourself, for example, if 7 hours, don't beat yourself up about not being 8. Listen to your body. And that's really the most important part is your recipe is yours. No one should be able to say, this is the one way. And I do feel like diet and fitness is finally getting to that same conversation of there's no one diet for every person on the planet. There's no one fitness plan for every person on the planet. There's not one sleep plan for every person on the planet. We're all different. But it's our responsibility to know what's right for us.
Yeah. And it takes some time to figure it out. It absolutely takes time to play with different things and track things with an Oura ring or other type of, gadget out there. That's really, really helpful. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the biggest factors in getting quality sleep? Because there's a lot of things that you kind of have to check off the box to make sure. You've got to have some sleep hygiene. I like to create my little cloud. I have my really nice sheets and my really nice pillows and my silk mask. And there's all these little things that I've done because I, have been at times in my life quite desperate to get adequate levels of sleep because of stress or moldy house or whatever's going on. So beyond what I just mentioned there, what are some other things that people need to do to make sure they're getting optimal sleep?
Yeah. And, I think it is going to be very different. Most of the things you talked about were sort of part of that bedtime routine. And, when you think about sleep, there's multiple times where you're influencing sleep, whether you realize it or not. What you do first thing in the morning, for a lot of people can impact that. So, we want to be able to move our bodies and get sunshine. And, that's one of the best recipes, even for a jet lag, is to make sure you start your day again, turning off that sleep. So you start your march towards sleep and your body clock starts clicking of, I turned it off. Now I'm start clicking towards when I want to be able to turn it back on. So it really depends on what feels right for you. And obviously a morning person is going to be much more focused on turning off sleep, getting started on their day, versus a night person, if they're having a hard time falling asleep, a little bit about figuring out when they should ideally go to sleep and setting their bedtimes may be a more important factor for them. And bedtime is a lot about that psychological part. So stress and mitigating stress and having a routine does help us mitigate stress because it feels like, okay, here's the pattern. But I think the one thing to keep in mind with sleep, if you aren't sleeping, your willpower, your ability to plan all loses its ability to have an impact. That's where if you don't sleep, you eat more calories and they're bad calories. So if you're having a hard time sleeping, I would start thinking, that's first thing in the morning. What do you want your bedtime to look like? And try to lay that out when you're at your cognitive best and you're not tired. And I think moms, we do that horribly because, by the time you tuck in the kids and you put in that last load of laundry and you do the 6 more things that before you go to bed that you think you need to do, we're often too tired to try a new tea or get our masks laid out or things like that. So as you're looking to try to revamp your sleep and start over, the most important part is think about what's going to feel good, but try to do it when you're at your cognitive best and put it next to your bedside or put it by your sink or wherever you need to go anyway. If you're going to brush your teeth, put out your things right next to where you brush your teeth. So you don't have to go hunt down the mask, or figure out what you need to do with that. Try to get your sleep environment in order. So when you're tired, you can just crawl into bed and it's not one more source of stress. A lot of people stress about sleep, and that actually causes more sleeplessness than the actual sleep itself. And so figure it out, lay it out, get excited about sleep, give it its due. Anything that's respected, we do it better, we treat it better. So lay it out just like you would your, the idea of a she shed. Get yourself ready for bed and make that environment so it feels snugly. I use a weighted blanket because the serotonin for me is fabulous, great for anxiety. But again, it can't be something I have to go find last minute. It has to be there and right on my bed and ready to go.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Like people, they can't go to sleep or they wake up and they get really frustrated. That used to be me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, ugh, because I knew that I wouldn't go back to sleep. I was going to be up for a couple of hours and you get that cortisol rush. And then there you went and you manifested not being able to go back to sleep. So you have to kind of manage that mindset. And I think also people that they get stressed about not getting enough sleep or they can't get enough done or they don't want to sleep because they want to get up and work out. And I think a lot of people come from this lack mindset, like they don't have enough time, they can't get enough done. And that's not true. You have plenty of time. You have an infinite abundance, but you have to change your mindset about sleep and not be frustrated. You just have to check off all the boxes, all these things that you need to do.
Productivity will come if you get good sleep. You're just way more productive. You actually do get that time back if you invest in sleep. It really does come back around. I've had multiple conversations where people weren't sleeping and they, by the time you drag and have 2 cups of coffee to compensate for not sleeping, if you actually sleep and you wake up and you get that half hour, 45 minutes back of drag or the post afternoon, tireds where you're not very productive again. If you're sleeping, you get that time back. So it is worth that investment.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to, if you have emotional trauma, to work on that can create constant stress and constant cortisol and stuff that you're not aware of that affects your sleep. And then don't eat before you go to sleep. I never sleep good if I eat right before I go to bed. You want that 3 hours at least.
Yeah, that's a temperature play again, because your metabolism ramps up, and alcohol is the same. During the pandemic, especially, you'll see the alcohol rates for people is through the roof. A lot of people are basically self-medicating towards that sleep. And although alcohol will relax you to fall asleep, the problem is the quality of what happens after that. Again, your metabolism's raised. You don't end up getting deep sleep. So in essence, you pass out, but you're not getting great sleep. So try to keep it again out of that 3-hour window before bed. It's, way better. Break the habit by making yourself a nice tea. Make yourself a different kind of drink that's healthy for you instead of a drink, and then slowly work yourself out of the alcohol fix you want to do in the evening.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I know so many people are imbibing because helps them to reduce stress,
Yeah.
but it causes more stress in the long run. but yeah, and also when you raise your blood sugar with food or that alcohol, you raise your body temperature and you're screwing up that circadian rhythm that your body is needing to stick to. So let's talk a little bit about, so you have the chili pad and you have like two different versions. So one that you have is really cool. You can kind of set it to like be colder at night and then kind of slowly warm up towards the morning when you wake up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I use buckets. I kind of joke that it's probably because I have 4 boys and I have to put lots of things in buckets. But I break sleep and your night into 3 different buckets because they are kind of messy. But bedtime is about sort of what feels good. So for some people, it's a cool, crisp sheets. For me, it is warming up to fall asleep. I want a warm bed. And the Uller product allows you to do that. But then it also allows you within sort of that 20 minutes, we want to try to fall asleep within sort of 10 to 30 minutes window. And then after that, you can make it cooler. So that's what I do. And when you do that, you're sort of facilitating that deep sleep again. So even if it feels good to warm up, you don't have to stay warm. In fact, that'll often cause people to wake up in the middle of the night is they've stayed too warm. And I did that wrong when I first started. I was like, I like it warm, but then I'd wake up in the middle of the night. And so this is sort of a response to that. So then you can set it cooler. But the other thing that happens is the second half of the night, your body is warming up, equivalent of the sun rising and warming up the planet. Your body's warming back up those 2 degrees. And so it wants it a little bit warmer. So some people wake up and be too cold. So it allows you in that second half of the night. And then we have a feature called Warm Awake, which again, when your body is warmed awake, actually releases the cortisol and helps turn off that sleep switch. And so it's a great way to kind of boost you out of bed with a little bit of burst. And it sounds crazy because everyone thinks if you're a warm, snuggly bed person, you're like, oh no, it's a warm, snuggly bed. I want to stay asleep. But in the morning, during that turning off time, that sleep switch is looking for that warming up. And so it does turn off sleep. And if your bed's really hot in the morning, people will not be able to stay in bed. You'll be fully awake.
It's so interesting. All these little things that you have to think about. I mean, and there's light also. Light plays a big role in regulating our circadian rhythm. Can you talk about how to optimize light in our environment and the problems with light and smartphones and televisions and stuff in the bedroom before you go to sleep?
Yeah, so light is very similar in the sense that we have receptors for light that we don't really think about. So it also, as to your point, plays a role in that circadian rhythm. And so different people, just like the 8 hours, it's important to keep in mind that temperature plays a role, and maybe that's a bigger factor for you and light's not, or vice versa. Maybe light is a bigger factor for you and you need to mitigate it. So it is really important of even all the tips. Caffeine doesn't affect him at all. And so he can have a pot of coffee and go to bed. The receptors in his brain actually just are not open for caffeine. And so it is really important as you listen to the tips, understand that, take away what works for you. But for a lot of people, light does make a really big difference. And so if you're on electronics, it's something called blue light. And what happens at that frequency is it's stimulating your brain that it's, again, in that, oh, I should be awake. It's peak sunrise and I need to be, awake. And so it overstimulates your brain and doesn't allow it to release the melatonin. So what we want to do is we want to be able to basically start dampening the lights. That is one of the perks of some of those smart light bulbs is you can actually dim them or have a schedule to dim them. Try not to watch TV before bed. I know that's, again, in the pandemic with binge watching, it's one more Netflix show is really hard to avoid. But again, if you think about it in terms of setting yourself up for success, if you're having a hard time falling asleep, this is one of the ways in which you can really try to set that body into a good spot and sort of be kind to yourself. And so maybe instead of watching TV, read a book and have a nice warm bath and create that routine of like, that's what I'm going to do to wind down. In essence, the Netflix show, which feels relaxing and and good may not be the best thing for our bodies to help us sleep. But there are lots of other ways we can do that.
Yeah, I love taking an Epsom salt bath with some lavender essential oil, and I always sleep so good because that bath, it heats you up, but then you cool down really quickly. Actually, the net effect is it cools your body down, so you sleep better. So yeah, there's just there's so much to this. But I think that using a chili pad is a great way to recreate our ancient environment, how our bodies were meant to go to sleep and stay asleep. And especially like I moved to Mexico, and it's going to be getting really, really hot here. I am just like, I am ready. I am armed and ready, because I don't think that it's going to be like 100 degrees and a 90% humidity. Like, it's just going to be really unbearable. So I'm so happy that I have my chili pad here. So can you tell us a little bit about where people can learn more about the chili pad and some of the research that you mentioned?
Yeah, so you can always visit our website at chilitechnology.com. Then we have a blog there, so you can read articles. I publish one a week. So there's tons of information there on everything from menopause to pregnancy and all the things we've talked about, circadian rhythm. There's a chronotype quiz there if you want to take it. So all of those. You can also find me on social media as the Sleep Geek. So you can track me down and ask me questions there. I always love getting questions. So feel free to reach out if you're just curious or you want to know more about something, because we have to fix this sleep thing together.
Yeah, we do. I mean, this lack of sleep is such an epidemic, and I feel like it's just going to get worse and worse and worse with the stress and all the EMF, the rising EMF in the environment. We didn't even go into that. But I love it that you have, a lot of, really people that I respect in health, like Chris Kresser, who I absolutely love. I saw an ad that he was, recommending the chili pad, and you have a lot of people that really are steeped in the research, really recommending your product. And I do too. I absolutely love it. And I just thank you for developing this thing. I mean, there's nothing else out there like it. It's definitely unique, and I highly recommend it. So you guys go check that out. And Tara, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Wendy Myers of MyersDetox.com. And if you like what you heard today, we've got hundreds of other shows. We're almost up to show 400. It's crazy. I've been doing this for almost 9 years. But we've got so many different shows on, detoxification and all different ways to, effectively detox your body and how toxins affect your body. And if you don't sleep, your body is not detoxing. When I'm working with people, priority number one is getting people sleeping, because your body, it just will not work correctly. You will not have vibrant health if you don't sleep optimally. So you have to work on this if you're not sleeping well and regenerating. So Tara, thanks for coming on. And you guys, I'll talk to you next week.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.